Amma was a young woman who lived in a busy African town where life moved fast. The town was always filled with the noise of traders calling out their prices, children running through the streets, and people carrying baskets of goods from the market. It was a place where everyone knew everyone and appearances mattered more than most things. If someone spoke loudly in anger, it spread through whispers by nightfall. If someone dressed in new clothes, it was the talk of the street the next day. Amma grew up in this world and she carried inside her a pride that many people noticed. She was beautiful, with smooth dark skin and eyes that sparkled whenever she smiled. But behind her beauty was a quick temper, a fire that lit up whenever things did not go her way. People often said that Amma was too proud, that she thought of herself as better than others. Amma did not mind. To her, pride was strength. She believed it showed people that she was not weak, that she would not let anyone walk over her. On a hot afternoon, the marketplace was crowded as always. Traders were shouting the prices of yams, fish, tomatoes, and fabrics. Drums played in the distance, children laughed, and goats bleated as they wandered between the stalls. Amma was walking quickly, her head held high, her colorful wrapper flowing behind her. She was in a hurry, for she had promised to meet a friend near the cloth sellers, and she hated to be kept waiting. As she pushed her way through the crowd, her mind was on herself alone, how she looked, how others saw her, and how she must not appear weak in front of anyone. She hardly noticed the older woman walking slowly with a heavy basket balanced carefully on her head. The woman's steps were small and steady, her back bent slightly from age, and her clothes were plain, the kind worn by someone who had worked hard all her life. In the rush of the busy market, the two collided. The edge of the old woman's basket brushed against Amma's arm. The basket wobbled and some oranges rolled out, tumbling onto the dusty ground. People nearby turned to look. The old woman, startled, struggled to steady her basket. "Ah, forgive me, my daughter," the old woman said softly, her voice shaking with age. She bent down slowly, trying to pick up the fallen oranges. Her hands trembled as she reached for them. But Amma's pride burned like fire in that moment. She did not see an accident. She saw an insult, a challenge to her dignity. Her eyes narrowed and her lips tightened. "Are you blind?" Amma snapped loudly, her voice cutting through the marketplace noise. "Do you not see where you are going?" The crowd grew quieter. Traders paused in their shouts, and eyes turned to the young woman and the elder on the ground. The old woman looked up, her face lined with wrinkles, and whispered again, "Forgive me, my daughter. It was not on purpose." But Amma's anger had already risen too high. She stepped forward, her hand moving faster than her thoughts. With a sharp motion, she slapped the old woman across the face. The sound of the slap echoed, louder than the drums in the distance. Gasps filled the air. A hush fell over the marketplace. The oranges rolled further away as the old woman froze in silence, her head turned slightly from the strike. For a moment no one moved. The only sound was the soft bleating of a goat nearby, as if even the animals felt the weight of what had just happened. The crowd's whispers began. "Did Amma just slap an old woman?" one trader murmured. "How could she?" asked another. Children tugged at their mothers' wrappers, asking what was happening. Some people shook their heads in disapproval. Others covered their mouths in shock. The old woman slowly straightened, her frail body trembling. She did not raise her hand in anger. She did not shout back. Her eyes, filled with quiet sadness, lowered to the ground. Without a word, she picked up the last of her oranges, placed them back into her basket, and turned away. Step by step, she walked out of the circle of eyes, disappearing slowly into the crowd. Amma stood tall, her chest rising and falling, her face still hard with pride. She thought to herself that she had shown strength, that no one would dare disrespect her again. She lifted her chin and adjusted her wrapper, acting as if nothing had happened. She moved on through the market, ignoring the stares that followed her. But inside, though she would not admit it, something felt heavy. For a brief second, when she saw the sadness in the old woman's eyes, Amma's heart had tightened. She quickly buried that feeling under her pride, convincing herself that she had done the right thing. To Amma, showing weakness was worse than being wrong. As she reached the cloth sellers, her friend greeted her with a cheerful smile. "Amma, you are late," the friend said. But when she looked into Amma's eyes, she noticed something different. A shadow behind the pride, a restlessness Amma could not hide. Behind them, the marketplace slowly returned to life. Traders shouted again, children laughed, drums played, and the story of what had just happened began to spread. Women whispered as they sold vegetables. Men shook their heads as they carried goods. The story of the slap traveled faster than the wind. By evening, when Amma returned home, the whispers had already reached her neighbors. They looked at her with questioning eyes. Some greeted her, but their voices carried judgment. Amma felt it but brushed it aside. She told herself it was nothing. She told herself people always talked and soon they would forget. But the truth was, in that one moment of pride and temper, Amma had planted a seed that would grow into something she could not yet imagine. The slap, quick and thoughtless, would not fade with the sunset. It would follow her, shaping her days in ways she did not expect. Amma sat in her room that night, staring at the moon through her window. She remembered the frail hands of the old woman, the quiet sadness in her eyes, the way she had walked away without a word. Amma's chest tightened again, but she shook her head and whispered to herself, "I was right. She disrespected me." But deep inside, where her pride could not reach, a small voice spoke. Was it truly disrespect? Or was it your pride that blinded you? Amma silenced that voice and closed her eyes, refusing to let it grow. Yet the night carried her unease, and in her dreams she saw the old woman again, walking away with her basket of oranges, her silence louder than any words. That night marked the beginning of Amma's lesson, though she did not know it yet. The next day in the town, the marketplace buzzed with more whispers than usual. People were not only talking about the prices of food or the latest news, they were talking about Amma. The story of the slap had spread through every corner of the busy town. Children repeated it while playing in the dusty streets. Women at the water well spoke in low voices, shaking their heads. Traders in the market told it again and again, each adding their own color to the story. Amma, the proud one, slapped an old woman in public, one person said. She showed no shame, another replied. May the spirits judge her, a man muttered as he arranged his baskets of cassava. Amma heard the whispers wherever she went. When she stepped out of her house in the morning, neighbors looked at her with eyes that were no longer friendly. Some avoided greeting her, while others gave only forced smiles. Inside, Amma felt something twisting in her chest, but she refused to show weakness. She lifted her chin higher and walked with more pride. Her mother, Abina, called her aside that afternoon. Abina was a strong woman who had lived long enough to see the ways of the world. She sat on a wooden stool, her hands busy peeling yams, when Amma walked past. Amma, she said calmly, come here. Amma sighed and sat down. She expected a lecture and she was not wrong. I have heard what you did yesterday, Abina said, her eyes fixed on her daughter. Is it true that you raised your hand against an old woman in the marketplace? Amma's face grew hot, but she tried to defend herself. She walked into me, mother. She almost made me fall. Everyone was watching. If I did nothing, they would think I am weak. Abina shook her head slowly. Strength is not in the hand that strikes, Amma. It is in the heart that forgives. That old woman may be poor and weak, but she is still a mother, maybe even a grandmother. You shamed her in front of everyone. Amma clenched her fists. Her pride did not allow her to accept the truth. She should have watched where she was going. People must respect me. Abina sighed deeply. Respect is not taken by force. It is earned by kindness. One day you will understand. But know this, Amma. Every action carries a shadow. The slap you gave yesterday will follow you. The world does not forget so quickly. Amma turned her face away, angry at her mother's words, but a part of her heart felt heavy. That night, when she lay in her bed, the memory of the old woman's eyes returned again, as if they were carved into her mind. Meanwhile, the old woman herself was nowhere to be seen. She did not return to the marketplace the next day. Some said she had gone to the next town. Others whispered that she was resting at home, too weak to walk after the humiliation. But no one really knew. Her absence only made the whispers grow louder. Days passed and Amma tried to carry on with her life. She wore her best clothes, walked with her usual pride, and spoke loudly in public. But the people no longer admired her confidence. Instead, they looked at her with judgment. Even her friends began to keep a little distance. When she joined them in the evening, they spoke less and their laughter felt forced. One afternoon, as she returned from the river with a pot of water on her head, a group of children ran past, chanting a new song they had made up. The girl who slapped the old? Her heart is proud, her hand is cold. Amma stopped in her tracks. The children laughed and ran further away, leaving her trembling with anger and shame. She wanted to shout at them, but what good would it do? Even children now mocked her. That night, she sat alone outside her house, staring at the stars. Her pride told her to stand firm, but her heart whispered that something was wrong. She remembered her mother's words, every action carries a shadow. The shadow of her slap was now stretching long across her days, touching every part of her life. Still, Amma did not fully change. She told herself the people were overreacting, that they would soon forget. She told herself she was still strong, still respected. But the truth was becoming harder to ignore. Then one morning news spread that shook the town. The old woman who had been slapped was not just any woman. She was Mame Efua, a respected elder from a neighboring village. Many people said she was wise, that she had helped settle disputes between families, that she had blessed many children and guided many young men and women with her advice. Some even whispered that she had connections with the village chief, and others believed she carried blessings from the ancestors. When Amma heard this, her stomach turned. She remembered the frail figure, the trembling hands, the quiet eyes filled with sadness. She had not slapped just any old woman. She had struck someone who carried honor, wisdom, and respect far greater than Amma's pride. The marketplace buzzed louder than ever. Amma slapped Mame Efua, people cried. Does she not know who the old woman is? Traders shook their heads. Women hissed in disapproval. Men muttered about curses and bad luck. Children repeated the story with excitement, as though it were a tale from long ago. Amma's world began to shrink. Everywhere she went, people stared. The judgment grew heavier. Her pride could no longer protect her from the truth. She had made a mistake that could not be erased easily. But Amma was still Amma. Instead of humbling herself, she hardened her heart further. She told herself, so what if she is respected? She disrespected me first. Yet deep inside, fear began to grow. She feared the power of the elders she had wronged. She feared the whispers of curses. She feared the lesson that life was preparing to teach her. And so, Amma's story was far from over. The slap that had seemed small and simple was now shaping her path, pulling her toward a future she could not yet see. The day of the gathering began like any other. Amma had no idea that her life was about to change again. Early in the morning, a messenger came to her home. He was a young boy, barefoot and out of breath from running. He bowed slightly and said, Amma, the chief has called for you. You must come to the community hall this afternoon. Amma frowned. Why would the chief call me? She asked. The boy shrugged, then ran off to deliver more messages. Amma stood in silence for a while. Her heart beat faster than usual. She wondered if this had anything to do with the old woman she had slapped in the market. But she quickly shook the thought away. No, she told herself, the chief has more important matters to think about. Maybe it is about the taxes or the market stalls. Still, unease grew inside her. By midday, Amma dressed carefully. She chose her best wrapper, bright red with golden patterns, and tied her headscarf neatly. She wanted to appear confident and strong in front of the whole town. But as she walked through the streets, people whispered behind her. They knew something she did not. When Amma arrived at the large community hall, the place was already filled with people. Men, women, and children crowded inside and outside the building, sitting on wooden benches, mats, or standing near the windows. The air buzzed with excitement and tension. Amma squeezed through the crowd, her head held high but her palms sweaty. At the front of the hall, the chief sat on his stool, wearing his colorful Kent cloth and holding a staff of authority. Around him sat the elders of the town, their faces serious. And there, right beside them, sat the old woman. Amma froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The old woman was dressed in simple but clean clothes, her gray hair neatly tied back. Her eyes were calm, but her presence filled the room with quiet power. She was not sitting like an ordinary old woman. She was seated on a stool reserved for people of honor. Amma's stomach sank. The whispers around her grew louder. Some people glanced at her, some shook their heads, and others looked at her with pity. Everyone knew what she had done. Everyone knew who the old woman truly was. The chief raised his hand and the room fell silent. His voice was deep and steady as he spoke. We have gathered here today to honor one of our own, a woman whose wisdom and kindness have guided many. Few have seen her in recent times, for she has lived quietly. But today we welcome her among us, Mame Efua. The crowd clapped and murmured in respect. The name rolled through the air like a drumbeat, Mame Efua. Amma's knees grew weak. Her chest tightened. She realized now why the people had judged her so harshly. She had not slapped just any frail old woman in the marketplace. She had slapped Mame Efua, the elder whose words carried weight, whose blessings were treasured, whose advice had shaped families for years. Amma felt as if the walls of the hall were closing in on her. Her pride, which had always protected her like armor, now felt heavy and useless. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the crowd, but it was too late. Everyone's eyes were on her. The chief continued. Mame Efua is not only an elder, but she is also a woman who has given much to our people. When disputes rose between families, she was there to calm them. When children needed guidance, she was there to advise them. When the sick needed care, her hands offered herbs and comfort. She has lived not for herself but for us all. A cheer rose from the crowd. Amma could not cheer. She could barely breathe. The memory of that day in the market came rushing back. The slap, the gasp of the crowd, the old woman's lowered eyes. Shame burned her skin like fire. Her mother, Abina, was seated in the crowd too. She looked at Amma with sad eyes that seemed to say, "I warned you." Amma turned her face away, unable to bear it. The chief then spoke again. "But today is not only to honor Mame Efua. It is also a day to reflect. For sometimes we forget who people are. We forget their value. We treat them with disrespect because we do not recognize the spirit inside them. This has happened recently in our own marketplace." The crowd grew still. Everyone knew what he meant. All heads turned toward Amma. Amma's heart pounded like a drum. She wanted to run, but her legs would not move. She stood frozen, her face hot, her eyes darting to the ground. The chief looked directly at her. "Amma, daughter of Abina, do you have anything to say to the people? Do you have anything to say to Mame Efua?" The hall was silent. Even the children stopped fidgeting. All eyes were on her. Amma's lips trembled, but no words came out. Her pride screamed at her to stay quiet, to show no weakness. But her shame screamed louder. Finally she whispered, I did not know." Her voice was so soft that many people leaned forward to hear. "I did not know who she was. I thought she was just an old woman in my way." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some people nodded, others shook their heads. The chief spoke firmly. "And if she had been only an old woman, does that give you the right to raise your hand against her? Respect is not only for the powerful or the famous. Respect is for every human being, young or old, weak or strong." Amma's face burned. She wished the ground would open and swallow her whole. Then slowly Mame Efua herself stood up. The crowd fell silent again. Her steps were slow but steady. She turned to face Amma. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the hall like a song. "I am old, yes," she said. "My back is bent, my hands are weak, my eyes are dim. But age does not make me worthless. I have lived many years and I have learned many lessons. One of those lessons is this: what is inside the heart is shown by the hands. A hand that strikes tells us what lies within." Amma's eyes filled with tears. The words cut deep, sharper than any knife. "But," Mame Efua continued, "I also know that every heart can change. A hand that once struck can one day lift others. A tongue that once wounded can one day heal. The question is, will you choose pride, or will you choose humility?" The crowd listened in silence. Some nodded in agreement, others whispered prayers. Amma stood trembling. She felt as though the entire weight of her mistake pressed down on her shoulders. The woman she had wronged was not shouting, not seeking revenge, but teaching her a lesson in front of everyone. It was harder than punishment because it forced her to face herself. She lowered her head. Tears rolled down her cheeks. For the first time, Amma felt her pride cracking. And so, the gathering that day was not only for honor. It became a mirror showing Amma, and everyone else, what respect truly meant. Amma stood still, her chest heavy as if a stone had been placed there. The truth of what she had done pressed down on her until she could hardly breathe. Her hands trembled, and she wished the ground would open and swallow her. She looked at Mame Efua, who sat quietly with her hands folded in her lap. Amma expected anger, shouting, or even curses. She thought Mame Efua would call her ungrateful and drive her away. But instead, the older woman's calm silence was worse than any punishment. Finally, Mame Efua lifted her eyes and spoke. Her voice was soft, yet every word carried weight. "Amma," she said slowly, "patience is like water. It flows gently, but it can shape even the hardest stone. Respect is like the ground we walk on. Without it we fall." Amma's lips trembled and she wanted to reply, but no words came. Her throat was dry, her chest rising and falling quickly. "You see, child," Mame Efua continued, "it is not the big actions that show who we are. It is the small ones. The way you speak to others, the way you wait, the way you handle what is not yours. These things reveal the heart." Amma lowered her head, tears gathering in her eyes. She wished Mame Efua had shouted at her, for the calm words pierced her soul far deeper. Her own thoughts shouted louder than any scolding voice could. The room felt still, as though the very air was listening. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees and a bird cried in the distance. Amma wiped her face quickly, ashamed to be seen in tears. "I thought I was clever," Amma whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought no one would notice. I only wanted. I don't even know what I wanted." Mame Efua looked at her, her eyes filled not with anger, but with a sorrow that cut Amma to the core. Cleverness without wisdom is like a knife without a handle, she said. It cuts the one who holds it. Amma's knees grew weak and she sank to the floor, clutching the edge of the stool beside her. Her mind replayed every step of her mistake, the lies, the careless words, the selfish choices. Each memory struck her like a blow and she realized how blind she had been. For a long moment neither spoke. Amma's sobs filled the silence, broken only by the soft rustle of Mame Efua's wrapper as she shifted in her seat. The oil lamp on the table flickered, throwing long shadows on the mud walls. Then Mame Efua rose slowly. She walked over to Amma and placed a wrinkled hand gently on her shoulder. The touch was light, yet it carried strength. "You are young," she said, "and youth often runs faster than wisdom. But listen to me, Amma. Running too fast makes one stumble. Do not let this stumble be the path you choose again." Amma looked up, her eyes swollen from tears. "I am sorry," she said, her voice hoarse. "I did not understand. I was foolish." Mame Efua gave a faint smile, though her face was still serious. "Sorry is the beginning," she said. "But the heart must change, not only the lips. Do you understand?" Amma nodded quickly, though she knew it would not be easy. Her chest still ached with shame, but inside, something new began to stir. A small light of understanding, a wish to do better. The night deepened outside and the lamp's glow grew dim. Amma sat still on the floor while Mame Efua returned to her chair. Neither of them spoke for some time. Yet Amma felt that silence itself was teaching her something. In her heart, Amma remembered the many times Mame Efua had shown her kindness. She remembered the meals shared, the stories told by the fire, the gentle laughter that filled the evenings. And now she saw how quickly she had risked losing all that with one careless act. Slowly she rose from the floor and moved closer to Mame Efua. She did not know what to say, so she simply knelt beside the old woman, resting her head lightly against her knee. For the first time that day Mame Efua let out a soft sigh. She placed her hand on Amma's head and stroked her hair. The gesture was tender, filled with a quiet forgiveness that words could never match. Amma closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks once more. But these tears were different. They were not only of shame but also of relief. She felt, deep in her heart, that she had been given another chance. When she finally lay down to sleep that night, she could not forget Mame Efua's words. They echoed in her mind again and again. Patience like water, respect like the ground, small actions revealing the heart. Amma turned on her mat and stared at the thatched roof above her. The stars outside shone faintly through the gaps. She whispered a promise to herself, "I will change. I will not let my foolishness be my story. I will walk with patience. I will show respect. I will be different." The morning sun rose gently over the village, painting the sky with soft orange and gold. Amma woke early, her eyes still swollen but her heart strangely light. She stepped outside and felt the cool breeze against her face. As she walked to fetch water, she greeted the neighbors she had once ignored. She smiled at a child who played near the path. Each small act reminded her of Mame Efua's words. It was not the big things but the small ones that showed the heart. She carried the heavy pot of water carefully back home, each step slow but steady. Her arms ached, but she did not complain. For the first time she felt that even this small task was shaping her into someone new. That evening as the fire crackled, Amma sat beside Mame Efua. She listened to her stories more carefully than before. Every word seemed like a seed, and Amma wanted those seeds to grow in her. She did not speak much, but her silence was different now. It was not the silence of guilt, but of listening, of learning. And Mame Efua, though she did not say it, could see the change in the girl's eyes. Amma knew the road ahead would not be easy. Mistakes are easy but change is hard. Still she felt a new strength within her. She told herself she would walk carefully, step by step, learning to be patient, learning to show respect, learning to let her small actions speak of a better heart. And so, under the quiet stars of the village, Amma's journey of change began. She did not know what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for sure: regret would not be the end of her story. It would be the beginning of something better. Amma stood trembling before the elder. Her whole body shook and her face burned with shame. Her heart pounded so loudly that she thought the whole courtyard could hear it. Tears filled her eyes until she could no longer see the faces around her clearly. The people had gathered to witness what would happen, and their whispers cut through her like sharp blades. She wanted to run, but her legs felt heavy as stone. Slowly Amma fell to her knees. The dust clung to her skin but she did not care. She pressed her hands together and lifted them toward Mame Efua. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Please, forgive me," she cried. "I was foolish. I let my anger rule me. I did not honor you and I did not honor myself. Please forgive me." The courtyard grew silent. The only sound was Amma's soft sobs as she bowed her head low to the ground. Mame Efua, who had remained quiet all this time, looked at her with calm, steady eyes. There was no anger in her face. Instead, there was a gentle strength that made even the crowd fall silent. The elder woman stood slowly, leaning on her staff. Her wrapper rustled softly as she stepped closer to Amma. Then she bent down and, with surprising gentleness, lifted Amma by her shoulders until she stood again. Her smile was kind but firm and her voice, though soft, carried to every ear. "True strength," Mame Efua said, "is not in pride but in humility." Her words floated in the air, wrapping themselves around Amma's trembling heart. The crowd nodded in agreement, murmuring among themselves. They had expected anger, perhaps even punishment, but what they saw was something greater. They saw wisdom. Amma's tears flowed faster, but they were no longer only tears of shame. They were also tears of release. A great weight seemed to lift from her chest. She realized in that moment that she had been given a gift, a second chance. The people in the courtyard began to whisper less and listen more. They saw a girl broken down by her own mistakes, yet also rising again through humility. The slap that had once brought disgrace was no longer the story. The story was this moment, this lesson. Amma wiped her face with the back of her hand. Her shame had not disappeared, but it had been transformed. It had become a teacher, a sharp reminder of who she did not want to be. From that day onward, Amma's life changed. She woke earlier than before, helping with chores before anyone asked. She swept the compound, fetched water, and cooked with patience. Her temper, once quick like fire, began to soften. At first, some people did not believe her change was real. They thought she was only pretending to win back favor. But little by little, day by day, Amma proved them wrong. One morning, when a younger child spilled water from a clay pot, Amma did not scold or raise her voice. She simply knelt, helped gather the broken pieces and said gently, "Be careful next time. We all make mistakes." The villagers who saw this nodded quietly, remembering the angry girl who once shouted at everyone. They could see she was different. Another time, when food was shared, Amma waited patiently for her turn instead of rushing forward as she once did. When an elder spoke, she listened without interrupting. When she was wrong, she admitted it quickly. These small actions spoke louder than any words. They showed that the lesson had taken root deep in her heart. Mame Efua watched her closely, not with suspicion, but with the eyes of a teacher who sees a student finally learning. She said little, but inside she was pleased. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Amma sat beside Mame Efua by the fire. The older woman told stories, her voice soft and steady. Amma listened with full attention, her hands folded neatly in her lap. After a long pause, Mame Efua looked at her and said, "Amma, do you see now? Respect is not shown in grand things. It is in the way you wait, the way you speak, the way you walk among others. The small things are the true test." Amma nodded, her eyes glistening. "I see now, Mame, and I will not forget. That day, when I fell on my knees before you, I felt as if my heart broke. But it was not death, it was the breaking of pride. You gave me life again." Mame Efua smiled gently. "A broken pot cannot carry water, but a humbled heart can carry wisdom. Hold on to it, child." Amma carried those words with her everywhere. The villagers also began to change the way they saw her. Children no longer ran from her when she passed. Instead, they greeted her with smiles. Women at the river spoke kindly to her. Men in the fields nodded with respect. Slowly, Amma rebuilt what she had once torn down with her temper. The slap that had once brought disgrace became a story told differently. People spoke of it not as the shame of Amma, but as the turning point of her life. They said, "Do you remember Amma? Once quick with anger, but now humble and respectful. Truly, humility is stronger than pride." Amma herself never forgot that moment. Whenever she felt her temper rising, she remembered the dust on her knees, the tears on her face, and the gentle hand of Mame Efua lifting her up. Years later, when younger girls came to her for advice, Amma would tell them the same lesson. She would say, "True strength is not in shouting, not in winning, not in pride. True strength is in bending when you are wrong, in kneeling when you must, in choosing humility over anger." And when they asked how she learned it, she would smile softly and answer, "Because once I too was foolish. But Mame Efua showed me the better way." The slap that once stung her face no longer hurt. It had turned into something else, something powerful. It had become the fire that melted away her pride and reshaped her heart. From that day, Amma walked with her head not high in arrogance, but steady with respect. She lived each day with patience, humility, and kindness. And she carried forever the lesson that had changed her life. True strength is not in pride, but in humility. The story of Amma was remembered in the village for many years. Parents told their children, elders reminded the young, and Amma herself became a living example. Her mistake had become her greatest teacher, and her humility had become her crown. The girl who once brought disgrace became the woman who brought wisdom. The end.